Good morning, students. And in continuation with the last lecture, as we have already covered the digestive system, upper part. Today we will start with the next organ that is of the digestive system, that is of the stomach. So let us start. So when we look at the stomach and the digestive process in it, so we need to know some facts about it, that the stomach's entrance is closed by a ring muscle at the end of the esophagus. What does that mean? It means that there is a physiological sphincter at the junction of esophagus with the stomach. You must be knowing that now the lower part of the pharynx continue as esophagus and the esophagus opens into the stomach, and the junction of esophagus with the stomach is called as GE junction, that is called as the gastroesophageal junction, and that is the opening, that is the beginning of the stomach's proximal end, and that is called as the cardiac end of the stomach. Okay, so when empty, the stomach is collapsed and shaped almost like a hot dog, or you can just say that you must have seen the hot water bottle which are used for the hot fermentations. They are the rubber or plastic bottles which are very easily moldable. The stomach is also such a collapsed structure, and I will also share a video of the stomach's anatomy so that you can correlate the things with each other. So the theory part with the practical thing as well. And the stomach is collapsed when empty, but once food enters, the folds of the stomach wall, which are called as rugae, they smoothens out and expands to more than a liter. That is, the wall is constricted when it is empty and it gets expand. It has a property of expandability because of the longitudinal mucosal folds, the rugae. So these rugae expands, stretch out and increase the capacity of the stomach when food enters, and it can be filled, expands to more than a liter. So this, just have a look over to, this is the stomach, and here is the esophagus, and here is the proximal end of the stomach, which is called as cardiac end. And so this junction is called as the cardioesophageal junction or gastroesophageal junction. Gastra word is used for stomach, and cardia word is used for the cardiac end of the stomach, and cardio word is used for heart. Okay, so keep these terminologies in mind. Sometimes there is a very little difference, but you have to be careful. So this is the cardiac end of the stomach, and this area which has been bulged upwards from the cardioesophageal junction. If we draw a horizontal imaginary line at the cardioesophageal junction, some area of the stomach is above this horizontal line, and this is called as the fundus of the stomach. And then this part is called as the body of the stomach, whole part, and this edge is called as this curvature, it basically is called as a lesser curvature of stomach, and here we can trace this larger curvature of the stomach as the greater curvature of the stomach. So the smaller curvature or lesser curvature, the greater curvature, the body, the cardiac end, the fundus of the stomach, and here this part is called as the pylorus of the stomach. That means when the stomach joins with the duodenum at the gastroduodenal junction, here is a physiological as well as anatomical sphincter at their junction, and this distal end of the stomach, which is a little bit constricted, is called as pylorus, and it has an imaginary demarcation from the body, from the lower dilatation. If we go up, make a vertical imaginary line from the lower dilated part. Okay, so this much part, this area is called as the pylorus of the stomach, and the pylorus continue into the duodenum, and at their junction, that is at the gastroesophageal junction, there is thickening of the wall of the stomach, and this is called as the pyloric sphincter of the stomach. So that means stomach is encircled by a sphincter at the cardiac end and also at the pyloric end. The sphincter at the cardiac end is physiological. Here you will not find any circular thickening of the muscle specifically, but because of the angle of the esophagus and some other physiological factors, this act as a sphincter. And a sphincter means that it will not let the food regurgitate into the esophagus. So to not get the food into esophagus regurgitation, so there was a need for a sphincter, and various angulation physiological factors maintain this sphincter physiologically. That means there ideally, or in normal health conditions, there is no regurgitation of the food, because once the food enters into the stomach has the various smooth muscles which contracts under effect of certain hormones and nervous stimulation, and there occur churning of the food. For whenever there is churning, intra stomach pressure will increase, and because of this increased intra-stomach pressure, intra-cavity pressure of the stomach, there could have been some food regurgitating into the esophagus, and some food undigested and unchurned could have been passed into the duodenum. But this does not happen, because at both ends of the stomach there are two sphincters: the cardiac sphincter at the proximal end at the gastroesophageal junction, and the pyloric sphincter at the distal end of the stomach at the gastroduodenal junction. Okay, so it is a closed sac which has food inside, and then churning occurs, and whenever the food is ready, after the churning and after sensitization with the acid, the HCl, and the digestive part of the stomach has been completed, then when the food is ready to be propelled into duodenum, then only the pyloric sphincter gets relaxed under effect of some hormones, and that is when the churned out and partially digested food is being propelled into the duodenum. So that is how stomach functioning works, and stomach has this is called, when you cut the stomach wall, you will find various layers. Like this is this circular layer. Here our fibers are the obliquely arranged, they are oblique muscular layer, and here the fibers are arranged in the longitudinal direction of the stomach itself. These are longitudinal muscle fibers. So in the gastrointestinal system, in the wall of the various organs and the organs of the digestive system, there are the wall is being formed by smooth muscles, and there are different layers as how the smooth muscles are being arranged. So there is an inner longitudinal layer, then an outer circular layer, and outermost oblique muscle layer according to the arrangement of the muscle fibers in the wall of the stomach. And when we reach up to the most inner part, that is when we cut the stomach and we see the inside of the stomach, we will find these folds, and these folds are called as the rugae of the stomach, and these rugae point and propel the food towards the pyloric sphincter. And whenever the stomach is empty, there are lots of rugae visible and they are in constricted state, but whenever the food enters, the stomach starts to expand, and these rugae gets stretched out. So that is how the wall is being formed, how the rugae are being formed, and these rugae how help in expansion as well as propulsion of the digested food towards the pyloric sphincter, and also help in the churning of the food. So that is how the stomach with its parts and its layers is present over here. So how does the enzymatic digestion in the stomach takes place? The stomach secretes millions of gastric glands, the parietal cells and the chief cells. So the parietal cells in the gastric gland secrete hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor, which is responsible for absorption of vitamin B12. And the chief cell, they secrete pepsinogen, which is an inactive enzyme precursor, and then it gets activated by the gastric juice to becomes the enzyme pepsin, and which help in the main digestion in the stomach. So the main digestive enzyme in the stomach is pepsin, which has been activated from its inert form pepsinogen with the help of gastric juice. Gastric juice activates pepsinogen, and this pepsin is being secreted by the chief cells. And the another group of cells in the stomach is parietal cells, which secrete hydrochloric acid, which is a important secretion from our stomach, and an intrinsic factor also, which helps in absorption of vitamin B12, because vitamin B12 absorption takes with the help of intrinsic factor after binding with the intrinsic factor. If there is deficiency of intrinsic factor from the stomach secretion and there is enough vitamin B12 in our diet, then we would not be able to absorb the vitamin B12 present in our diet if intrinsic factor is deficient. So it is very important that our parietal cells should be in good healthy functioning position to secrete the acid as well as the intrinsic factor, so that vitamin B12 absorption can take place. So it is not just only the diet and nutrients, it is also the functioning of our body, the physiology of our body. How is our body acting? Is our body in good functional state to act properly, and absorption and digestion of various nutrients? So that is how the digestion in stomach takes place, and the digestion process continues in the small intestine and completed here, and nutrients are absorbed through its wall. So the digestion, somewhat of digestion is also continued in the small intestine as well, but the major function of the small intestine comes to the absorption of the nutrients which has been digested. So the small intestine is about 5 to 6 meters in length and has 3 regions: duodenum, jejunum and ileum, as you must already be knowing that. So if we look at the digestive system, it starts from the oral cavity, the pharynx, and then the esophagus, the stomach, then the small intestine. First comes the duodenum, then jejunum, then ileum continuing to cecum, then ascending colon, then transverse colon, then descending colon, then sigmoid colon, then rectum and anal canal. So that is how it ends at the anal orifice. So if you have a closer look at the intestine, this is the duodenum part, which is C-shaped. So it has first part which is horizontal, second part vertical, third part again horizontal, and fourth part oblique. So this is the end of the duodenum and beginning of the jejunum. So this is the duodenojejunal junction, and so these junctions continue with each other. Only there are some physiological or anatomical changes also there, but the cavity or the lumen continues as such, and the whole of the digestive system is a continuous tube. There are no interruptions from the oral cavity till the anal orifice. And so these are the coils of the jejunum, and after jejunum these are the coils of the ileum, and when ileum ends, it ends at the ileocecal junction. So ileum opens into the cecum, and from cecum the feces. Basically, after absorption from the intestine, there is only fecal matter and only few salts and water are there. So salts and water are being further absorbed by the large intestine, while the feces are being transported and transferred till the anal orifice. So here it is the cecum part of the large intestine, then the ascending colon part, then the transverse colon, which has been cut in this diagram, then the descending colon, then the sigmoid colon, and then continuing to the rectum and anal canal. So that is how different parts, so duodenum, jejunum, ileum, they have very important role. So duodenum have a little absorption, jejunum has more absorption, jejunum, ileum play an important role in the absorption. So when we look at the wall of the small intestine itself, we can again have a look like every other wall or luminal structure. The wall has the smooth muscles over here. So you can see this is the covering epithelium of the peritoneum of the small intestine. You must be knowing that the peritoneum, the peritoneal cavity has two layers, the visceral and the parietal layer. The visceral layer is in contact with the viscera, and parietal layer is in contact with the parietes of the abdominal wall. So this is the layer which is in contact with the viscera. This is the visceral layer of the epithelial of the squamous epithelial or which is also called as the mesothelial lining. So, and this is the outermost layer. So this layer has the longitudinal arrangement of the fibers, the longitudinal layer outermost, then the inner circular layer, it was circularly covering it, and then this is the layer of submucosa having various glands in the submucosa, and this is the layer of the muscularis mucosae, and here is the lamina propria, and this is the lining epithelium. So the lining epithelium along with the lamina propria and the muscularis mucosae, these three layers combinedly are called as the mucosa of the intestine or of that particular luminal organ. So this is the mucosa and this is the submucosa. This is the inner circular layer, and this is the outer longitudinal layer, and then the visceral layer of the peritoneum. So that is how these layers are arranged, and these have been sectioned to show you the three-dimensional arrangement of this tube, which has a lumen. Towards the lumen is the mucosa, and mucosa has the lining epithelium, lamina propria, and the muscularis mucosae, and then outer covering is the submucosa, and then more outer is the circular layer, and more outer is the longitudinal layer, and outermost is the peritoneal lining, the mesothelial lining, which covers. So that is how is the arrangement. So all these glands are being formed to secrete their secretions into the lumen, and the surface lining epithelium has various ducts of these glands, and various you must be knowing about the submucosa has connective tissue as well, blood vessels as well, to support the nutritory function of the components of the intestinal wall itself. So every wall has a nerve, artery and vein. Okay, and the fold of peritoneum which carries these nerve, artery and vein up to the wall of that organ is called as mesentery. So mesentery is the fold of peritoneum. It just brings these vessels inside its layers and just wrap around that organ to form the mesothelial layer, the visceral layer. So just go through diagram and you will be able to understand the structure of stomach and small intestine and their function. So now I am coming on to the accessory organs of digestion. Now comes the liver. The liver secretes the bile, and you must know this is a very common thing which you already know. So what is liver? Liver is the largest internal organ of the body and also one of the most complex organs, which lies in upper right abdomen just under the diaphragm, and it secretes bile, and bile is that fluid which is secreted by liver to help in emulsification of the fat, so that the fats and fatty acids get digested and absorbed into our system. So if there would have been no liver and no bile, there we would not be able to digest the fats. So it's very important. And apart from the secretion of bile, there are various other important components. There are various important functions of the liver, which I will discuss in the coming slide. So the largest internal organ of the body and also one of the most complex organs, which lies in the upper right abdomen. Okay, so liver is not a part of the main digestive tube, and it, along with the pancreas and gallbladder, are accessory organs. That is, they help in secretion of certain juices, certain enzymes which help in the digestion of the food. So the liver secreting bile is secreted by the liver, stored in the gallbladder and ejected into the small intestine. So, and you already knowing that the bile which is secreted by the stomach, by the liver in the bile canaliculi, is being collected in the gallbladder again, and then it is being collected in the common bile duct and secreted into the duodenum via the common bile duct at the and join with the pancreatic duct to form the sphincter of Oddi and the ampulla of Vater. You already have read all this thing in your 11th and 12th classes also. So that is how the bile along with the pancreatic juices combining with the pancreatic duct reaches into the duodenum. So, what are the major functions? Apart from secreting bile, the liver helps in maintaining homeostasis by removing or adding nutrients to the blood, converts excess glucose to glycogen and stores it, converts excess amino acids to fatty acids and urea, and stores iron and certain vitamins also, and it detoxifies alcohol and other drugs and poisons. That is why in certain poisoning, and especially who are chronic alcoholics, the drinkers, they overload their liver, and the liver needs to detoxify all this, and the liver cells get damaged, and slowly with this, and eventually the liver damage occur, liver cirrhosis and liver carcinoma can occur in such patients or chronic alcohol drinkers. Okay, and we must be knowing that various proteins and these all are being synthesized by the liver, and also it stores excessive glucose to glycogen. So the next organ is the pancreas, which secretes digestive enzymes. So pancreas is an elongated gland that secretes both digestive enzymes and hormones that help regulate the level of glucose in the blood. The enzymes secreted by the pancreas are called trypsin and chymotrypsin. So these trypsin and chymotrypsin enzymes are in their inert form as trypsinogen and chymotrypsinogen, and they are then get activated into trypsin and chymotrypsin, and then they help in digestion of the food. So the enzymes, the pancreatic lipase enzyme is helpful in degradation of fats. So lipases are helpful in degradation of or digestion of fats, and amylases break down almost all type of carbohydrates except cellulose disaccharides, ribonuclease and deoxyribonuclease, split RNA and DNA to free nucleotides. The pancreas releasing digestive enzymes are very important. So how does all this thing take place? Just have a look. This is the liver, and this is the stomach, and this is gallbladder, and this is the bile duct, and this is the pancreas. And you can see when the food enters, this is the cardioesophageal junction, and this is the pyloric sphincter here at this level. And so whenever food comes, it gets churned, and after that it's ready to move. Then the pyloric sphincter gets relaxed and it's entered into the duodenum, and at duodenum further digestion needs to take place. So we can see the bile secreted and concentrated by the gallbladder reaches by the common bile duct, and here this is the pancreas, which lies in the concavity of the duodenum up till the spleen. So this elongated structure is the pancreas, and it has this pancreatic duct, and this common bile duct joins with the pancreatic duct and to open into the ampulla of Vater in the second part of the duodenum. And that is how then these enzymes act upon the food which has reached in the intestine. So that is how the enzymes, the cholecystokinin and the trypsin, and the cholecystokinin helps in contraction of the gallbladder, releasing the bile from it, and the trypsin, chymotrypsin, all these enzymes, they act upon it and they activate they digest the food materials. So that was all for today. We will continue the lecture tomorrow also, and read the things in detail, because with the help of these videos I am just making you people sensitizing that these are the topics and you need to cover this, because the videos are so difficult to process, take us so much long time. So you need to cover it with help of your books, and I have made you people understand how to go ahead and what are the things you are supposed. So you have to need to read the details of the wall, the process of digestion, and the different parts of intestine and stomach. So keep reading, students. Thank you.